all of your favorite recipes.
Simply Food.
You should know by now that you're in for a treat.
Simply Food.
There's no other channel where you'd rather be.
Simply Food.
Seafood, pasta, cakes, and pies. Sing and laugh and even cry. Like and share and hit subscribe. Simply Food by TY.
Alright y'all, so let's run down the ingredients really quick. So you're gonna need some heavy whipping cream, Chessman butter cookies, lady fingers. Now that is a very specific brand that I like and I order them on Amazon. I feel like the right type of lady fingers makes the biggest difference whether you're making regular tiramisu or cheesecake tiramisu. So really take that into account. Get ones that are imported from Italy or product from Italy, I should say, that I promise you it'll make a big difference. You're gonna need some pure vanilla, cocoa powder, instant coffee. You can use whatever type of brand you want. You don't have to use Folgers. Gelatin, 8 ounces of espresso mascarpone, 16 ounces of cream cheese, and then 8 ounces of regular mascarpone cheese. Let's get into making this cheesecake, okay? In a separate bowl, you're gonna add 1 cup of hot water. Now you're also gonna be adding in 2 tablespoons of instant coffee. Of course, you do not have to use Folgers. You can use whatever type of coffee you would like. Give that a little mix around and then we're gonna set that to the side. If you want, you can also add some brandy or coffee liqueur at this point as well. Now we're gonna start to work on the crust of the cheesecake itself. I'm gonna be using Chessman cookies, which is a butter cookie. You don't necessarily have to use Chessman cookies. That's completely fine if you wanna use graham crackers. I'm using the entire package, so that was 3 full sleeves it looks like. If you have a food processor, you can use that or a heavy pan, or I'm going to be using this mallet here, which will pretty much all do the exact same thing. Now, it's okay if there are some chunks in it, but you definitely don't want it to be huge pieces of the cookie because when you go to cut it, it'll completely fall apart. We're adding in 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Remember to make sure you're using unsalted butter in this particular recipe. Just give that a good mix around, and now we're going to transfer that to the actual dish. You don't have to worry about spraying it down. Nothing will really stick. It'll come out really easily. And then you just want to make sure you're spreading that out nice and even. So that way, when you go to cut the crust later on, you don't have to stress about one side of the cheesecake leaning more to the other side. Now I'm going to use my hands because that's just what I like to do, you know? It makes it easier, and you can also kind of gauge where it seems like it's not as even. You want to put that in the freezer for minimum 45 minutes. So go ahead and do that part first before you start anything else. So now we're going to work on the cream cheese. Make sure I'm adding in 16 ounces of softened cream cheese. I'm adding in 8 ounces of plain mascarpone cheese. To make it easier for yourself, have that cream cheese at room temperature. It'll make it significantly easier when you're going to mix it up. I'm adding in 8 ounces of the espresso mascarpone cheese. Now, if you can't find that, because I'm aware that that's not at every single grocery store, you can absolutely use 16 ounces of the regular mascarpone. That's completely fine. You'll get the coffee flavor later on. Now, once you can see that that starts to cream up nicely, we'll add in 1 teaspoon of the vanilla. Make sure that you're using pure vanilla. That's always key. And then you're just going to put that in a bowl and set that to the side. So now we're going to work on the sweetening aspect. So I've just added in 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, and we're adding in 2 full cups of the powdered sugar. Of course, make sure you start that off really slowly so that you do not make a huge mess. Once that gets to be almost the consistency of, I would say, almost like yogurt, then you can add in a tiny splash of vanilla. It doesn't even have to be a full teaspoon. And then that's pretty much what it's going to look like. It's not really, it kind of almost reminds me of a buttercream icing, but not so much. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the gelatin. Now, you do not have to add gelatin. That is optional. You don't have to do it. I like to do it just to make sure that it stays nice and firm. So that was 1 pack of gelatin and 2 tablespoons of the coffee mixture. Now, a key so that you do not run into problems later on, make sure that the coffee that you've just added to the gelatin is hot. If not, it is going to congeal and you'll never be able to mix it in. So try to make sure that you have all of this stuff all laid out and together so that when you go to add the gelatin in, you won't run into any issues. So now we're adding in the heavy whipping cream aspect to our cream cheese mixture. And as you can see, you see how that's nice and thick? If I were you, I would plop that in the microwave for just a few seconds so that it can turn back into liquid and then give it a mix around. If not, you'll have to really, really whip it up so that that gelatin gets mixed throughout. Because essentially what'll happen is you'll go to bite down in the cheesecake and then all of a sudden it'll feel like it's the texture of Jell-O. And ain't nobody got time for that, okay? So now we're in the home stretch, you guys. We've took our shell out of the freezer, and I'm adding in, I wouldn't even say half of the mixture at this point. That was 2 heaping tablespoons of it. You honestly just want a thin layer so that you can cover up the bottom of the shell. You want to be mindful of leaning more towards the lighter side on this part because you want to make sure that you have enough later on to cover up those ladyfingers in a few minutes. So I'm not really using that much. And if you need to, you can always gradually add in more little by little at a time. So now that we've gotten that nice and smooth, what we're going to do now is start to work on the ladyfingers. Now, really important here, when you put this inside of the coffee mixture, do not just let it sit in there because it will completely fall apart. No more than 2 to 3 seconds. I'm telling you, you might seem like it's not going to soak up enough, but they really do it, and it doesn't take much. Again, if you wanted to, you could also make this boozy, which is what some people typically do around the holiday times. They'll add brandy or some sort of coffee liqueur, so you can absolutely do that if you would want. But just remember to only really keep these in for about 2 to 3 seconds because they will completely fall apart on you. And you also don't necessarily want the coffee flavor to completely overwhelm the entire cheesecake, you know what I mean? So now that we've gotten all of our ladyfingers in, we can go ahead and add in that next layer of our cream cheese mixture. And at this point, feel free to just cake it right on the top of it there. Now, if you want to do any piping decoration, of course, leave yourself some extra. I'm not going to be doing that for this recipe because I'm just going to put the cocoa powder on the top of it. But if you wanted to do some piping, then of course you need to make sure that you leave yourself some extra cream cheese to the side. But I'm not really doing all that. Ain't nobody got time for all that today. Now you want to make sure that, of course, that this is nice and smooth because we are going to be putting this in the refrigerator for a minimum of 8 hours. Now, I will tell you guys now, if you try to cut into this before that 8-hour mark, it is not going to work. I like to let mine sit for 24 hours just to be on the safe side because you really want to make sure that this is nice and firm. So wrap it in some cling wrap. I also put aluminum foil over it just to be on the safe side. Put it in the fridge. 24 hours later, now I'm just adding on that cocoa powder on the top. Again, if you wanted to do any piping, you absolutely could. I would suggest do that first prior to adding the cocoa powder. Once you have a decent amount of the cocoa powder on there, go ahead and stop. Don't get too crazy with that because it can be very overpowering. And I would also kind of suggest find a good cocoa powder. Strangely enough, the Hershey's Unsweetened Dark cocoa powder is actually really, really good. I actually quite enjoy it. Now, just to save yourself a disaster, take a butter knife and run it around the edge of it just to make sure that when you lift up your pan, you don't destroy your cheesecake. And that is it, you guys. It's a really, really simple recipe. I know it might seem like it's complicated, but it really isn't. And in all honesty, the prep time for this is maybe, I would say, about 10 to 15 minutes. So the hardest part of this is honestly just the waiting. If you are new to my channel, welcome to Simply Food by TY. If you're one of my returning subscribers, well, y'all babies know I love y'all so much. And as always, y'all babies stay cute and take care. Bye, guys. Enjoy.
In the kitchen.
Simply Food by TY.
We hope that you enjoyed it.
Simply Food by TY. If you haven't took the time, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Simply Food.